ChatGPT said, "You ever notice how some folks just disappear into the background after a certain age, like the world starts looking right through them?" That's how it was for Elena Rodriguez, a woman who'd given 3 decades to the Air Force, built her life around duty and precision, then drifted into retirement like a stone vanishing in a lake. She moved through Colorado Springs in faded jeans, kept her old Honda running, spent afternoons at the library, tended her little garden, and nobody paid her any mind, which, honestly, was fine by her. Until the phone rang one ordinary Tuesday and shattered her peace with a jolt. "Ma'am, this is Captain Williams from Peterson Air Force Base. We need someone with your experience for an emergency training exercise. Most of our senior staff are deployed overseas." The kid on the line sounded desperate, though he tried to hide it. Elena just straightened up, that old muscle memory still alive in her spine, and asked, "What kind of training?" "Mountain weather navigation, emergency protocols, stuff she hadn't touched in 3 years. Her flight suit was still in the closet, looking crisp and out of place, like a relic of someone else's life. But there was something in that young captain's voice, a note that said, "Please, we need you." "When do you need me?" "Tomorrow." 0800. And almost apologetically, "Ma'am, the roster's mostly junior officers. They're not used to, well, consultants from your generation." Elena nearly laughed. Generation. Such a polite way of saying, "You're old." She just said, "I'll be there." That night, pulling her flight suit from the closet felt surreal. The fabric was stiff, unfamiliar, like she was about to impersonate herself at a younger, stronger age. In the mirror, the woman staring back was gray-haired, weathered, but her hands, they remembered. That drive to base the next morning was a return to another life. Every mountain peak, every turn on those winding roads, brought back memories, landings in the dark, missions nobody would ever know. The base itself seemed smaller, more modern, full of faces that didn't know her name or story at the checkpoint. A young guard squinted at her ID. "You're here for flight training?" She corrected him, "Technical consultation." Though what did it matter, really? She was just a ghost in a flight suit to these kids. Crossing the tarmac, she saw the big S-70 tactical transport, hulking and massive, like a sleeping giant from her past. Folks glanced up, some looked away, and a couple outright snickered. Elena ignored them and found herself in a briefing room where 5 officers sat hunched over weather reports and flight charts. The conversation died the second she walked in. "Gentlemen, this is your technical consultant," announced Captain Williams. But it was Colonel Marcus Lauren, a swaggering, broad-shouldered guy, who eyed her up and down and smirked. "Technical officer? What kind of aircraft did you work on?" "Various tactical transports," she answered, careful, "and some classified missions." Lauren's skepticism was so thick you could cut it. Lieutenant Ryan Foster, the golden boy pilot for this training, exchanged looks with his buddy. 32, polished, textbook smart, but mountain weather was just theory to him. "You'll be observing from the passenger section," Lauren added, almost gleeful. "Observer, passenger, civilian." Each word another way of telling her she didn't belong. When the briefing wrapped, Elena stuck around, poring over weather charts. Something felt off. The numbers were too neat, too clean for Colorado mountains. She'd learned to trust her instincts more than any forecast. That night, she dug out her old logbook and found pages full of stories she couldn't tell. Midnight landings, impossible recoveries, the line between life and death marked in ink. She'd be a passenger tomorrow. But if her gut was right, these cocky young men were about to get a lesson in humility. Next morning, the crew area buzzed with the confidence of people who thought today would be a cakewalk. Ryan Foster held court at the coffee machine, boasting about aerobatics, talking big about mountain flying. Elena just listened, silent. The signs were there, subtle changes in wind, off-kilter readings on the weather gear, signs these men were missing. Colonel Lauren came in, loud and cocky as ever, making cracks about her age and her flight suit, stirring up laughter. Even young Technical Sergeant Kim leaned over and joked, My grandmother has the same flight suit. Elena let it slide. She'd dealt with worse. When they finally boarded the S-70, she got ushered to the rear, the so-called passenger observation area. Behind a metal partition, cut off from the cockpit, she felt like someone locked out of their own home. The engine started up, the crew settled in, and Colonel Lauren's voice boomed. At least we won't have to worry about backseat driving from our technical advisor. More laughter. Elena opened her logbook, started writing, taking notes on every tiny detail. Engine pitch, instrument readings, vibrations through the hull. As the plane lifted off, clouds thickening outside. She watched Ryan up front, still so sure of himself. But 20 minutes in, things began to go wrong. The turbulence got worse. Warnings started flashing. Elena saw it before anyone else. This wasn't routine. This was the kind of storm that could tear a plane apart. We need to reduce throttle and adjust auxiliary controls, she called out, but Ryan snapped. I don't need advice from the passenger section. I've got this. Classic. She went silent, knowing exactly where pride like that leads. Suddenly, the S-70 pitched hard, alarms shrieking, instrument panels dying one after another. Ryan turned pale as the blood drained from his face, barely holding on. For one terrifying moment, no one was flying the plane. The colonel barked orders, but there was no one left to take over. Elena unbuckled, stepped forward, and said with a calm she'd earned the hard way, "Put me in the pilot's seat." Silence. They looked at her, really looked, for the first time. With nowhere else to turn, Lauren finally moved aside. Sliding into that seat felt like coming home. Her hands moved on instinct. Reduce throttle, adjust the wings, listen to the airframe, not the panicked voices. Colonel Lauren demanded, "Why are you slowing down?" She didn't answer, just let her actions speak. Piece by piece, the plane steadied. Instruments flickered back, Elena flying by feel and memory. Mountain valleys she knew like old friends, wind she could sense in her bones. Someone whispered, "Who are you really?" She just smiled. Someone who's been underestimated before. Then, out of the blue, Sergeant Kim connected the dots. Elena Rodriguez, Carter's student, one of the so-called ghost pilots, known only in whispers. From that moment, everything changed. Respect replaced doubt. She guided the S-70 through impossible weather, brought them in on a landing so smooth folks didn't realize they were down until the engines powered off. On the ground, the mood flipped. Lauren couldn't meet her eyes. Ryan Foster shook with realization. Kim searched databases for records of her career and found only fragments, enough to paint a picture of someone whose legend had been hidden in classified files. Word spread like wildfire through the base. By evening, Elena was a hero. Everyone wanted her story, her advice, her mentorship. Captain Williams apologized. Lauren submitted a formal recommendation for her to become an honorary instructor, and Kim presented her with Carter's old flight badge, a gesture so sincere it brought tears to her eyes. Still, Elena kept things in perspective. She knew recognition was nice, but what mattered was that 5 lives had been saved. A formal inquiry followed, led by Brigadier General Hayes. Everyone had to face what had almost happened. Elena explained why she hadn't forced her way in sooner. Protocol, chain of command, all that. Foster, humbled, admitted his inexperience nearly killed them. General Hayes called it what it was, a systemic failure to recognize expertise just because it came wrapped in gray hair and modest clothes. But from that reckoning, real change came. New protocols, anti-bias training, mandatory review of consultant credentials. And for Elena, the Pentagon invited her to design a new program. Advanced Weather Navigation and Emergency Flight Ops, teaching Carter's old-school methods to a new generation. She made her conditions clear: student selection by skill, total control over the curriculum, and freedom to teach by feel, not just the manual. They agreed. 6 months later, Elena stood in the same briefing room where she'd once been mocked, now chief instructor, teaching the best pilots in the country how to survive when everything else fails. Her lesson was simple: respect experience, trust your instincts, Never let arrogance close your mind to learning. The sky doesn't care how old you are or what you look like. It only cares if you know how to fly.so. Let me ask you, after all this, do you think experience gets overlooked too often in your world? When's the last time you learned something from someone everybody else ignored? Drop your thoughts below. I want to hear your stories about pride, humility, and the moment you realized the real experts might be the folks you least expect.